So we're going ahead now to draft the front panel of our blouse. I've already gone ahead to iron paper gum to my lining because I'll be drafting this directly on my lining, and also made a mark there at the top of my lining. This is going to serve as my shoulder line. So from my shoulder line, I'm going to be taking down my shoulder to chest measurement, my shoulder to bust point, my shoulder to under bust point, my shoulder to waist measurement, and my shoulder to the full length of my blouse. So after marking down all these points, I'm going to go ahead to rule them out into straight lines. So right now we're going to be marking our shoulder measurement. So the shoulder we're working with today is 16 inches. 16 divided by 2 is 8 inches. So we're just going to be marking 8 inches there at our shoulder line. And we'll be taking 3 inches as our neck width. Then we'll come down from that 8 inches by 1 inch, and we'll connect that 1 inch to meet our 3 inches mark. So this is just for us to get our shoulder slope. We're going to be coming back later to mark our actual neck width. So at my chest line, I'm also going to be taking my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. That's my shoulder measurement divided by 2. Then I'm going to be connecting from my chest line to meet my shoulder line with a straight line. So we're going to be taking the midpoint of our armhole line. So I'll just place my end tape like that and just fold it into 2. Then I'll mark the midpoint there. So right now we're going to be taking our nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus half inch. So the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 8 inches divided by 2 is 4 inch plus half inch is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to be taking that 4.5 inches at my under bust, at my waistline, and also at my bust point. So at the full length of my blouse, I'm going to be adding 1 inch to that 4.5 inches. So that is 5.5 inches. So I'm going to be marking that 5.5 inches at the full length of my blouse. This is because I want it to flay out a little bit at the bottom. If you don't want that, you can go ahead and still take the same 4.5 inches there at your full length. So I'm going to be connecting all these lines together, then connect it down to meet that 5.5 inch I made at my full length, just like that. So we're going to be marking out our darts now. So towards the center front, I'll take half of an inch at my waistline and half of an inch at my under bust line. So towards the side, I'll take 2 inches at my under bust line and 2 inches at my waistline. So I'm just going to connect these points together. So with a curve ruler, I'm going to be connecting my under bust to meet my bust point. Just like that. If you don't have a curve ruler, you can totally do this with your free hand. So I'll connect it like that. Then I'll also connect that half inch that to also meet my bust point like that. So at the bottom leg of my dart, I'm going to be coming up by 2 inches. Then I'm going to be connecting my dart to meet that 2 inches mark that I made, just like that. So that mark we made at our armhole, we're going to be connecting it straight down to meet our bust point. So at that line we just made at our armhole, we are going to be coming down by 2 inches. So the reason we are coming down by 2 inches is because it was 2 inches that we took at our under bust. So if you took 1.5 inches that at your under bust, please come down by 1.5 inches. So I'll just go ahead now to use my curve ruler to connect that 2 inches that we marked, connect it to meet my bust point, just like that. We can see that our bust cup is already formed. So I'm just using my freehand to just perfect it. So at that curve that we made, I'm going to be extending it by 2 inches. This is to avoid shortage of fabric when I'm joining my pieces together. If you're used to sewing princess darts, you will know that if you don't extend it, the fabric is going to be short when you're sewing. So from that 2 inches point, I'm just going to connect my armhole like that. So I'm going ahead right now to mark my neckline. I'm taking the width of my neck at 5.5 inches because this blouse is going to have a boat neckline. So the width of my neck, I'm taking it at 5.5 inches, and the depth of the neck, I'm taking it at 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to connect like that to form my neckline. You can go ahead right now to give any neckline that you want, a round neck, whatever neckline that you want. So I'm going to be adding ½ inch allowance at the top of my shoulder, just like that. So we've gone ahead to mark out our neckline. So right now we're going to be taking our body measurement. So the bust measurement I'm working with is 40. 40 divided by 4 is 10. So I'm going to be marking that at my chest line. Then I'll add extra 3 inches as seam allowance. So why I'm taking up to 3 inches as seam allowance is because I need 1 inch to join the center and the side seam together. So at my waistline, I'm going to be taking my waist measurement divided by 4. So I'm marking the quarter of my waist measurement. I have to replace the dart because I'm going to be cutting the dart off. So what I have as my dart is 2.5 inches. Then I'll mark it. Then I'll add my 3 inches seam allowance. So at the full length of my blouse, I'm going to be taking my upper hip measurements divided by 4. So if you don't have your upper hip measurements, you can as well take your hip measurements divided by 4, then you mark it plus your allowance. So I'll just go ahead to connect the points together. At the midpoint of my armhole, I noticed I didn't go in by ½ inch, which I was supposed to. So at this point, I'm just going in by ½ inch, then I'll just connect it to my shoulder because, it's never too late to correct your mistakes. At the bottom of our blouse, we're going to be coming up by 1.5 inch. Then we're going to be using our curve ruler to connect it, just like that. So we're basically done with our front panel. We're just going to cut this out. That half-inch mark, we're just going to blend it to the line. Then we'll continue cutting. So we'll go ahead to notch our underbust. This is very important because it's going to help us when we are cutting our wording. So just watch the lines I'm cutting. So we are done cutting our front panel. See the way it's looking. So now let's cut our back panel. So I've gone ahead to mark out some points. I took about 1.5 inch as my zip allowance. I've taken my shoulder measurement, sloped my shoulder. I took my shoulder to my chest line, my shoulder to my waistline, and my shoulder to the full length of my blouse. So right now I'm just going to be taking the midpoint of my armhole. Then I will just curve out my armhole. So I want to mark out my dart now. I'm going to be taking my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus half of an inch. I'll take that at my waistline, at the full length of my blouse, and also at my chest line. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 divided by 2 is 4 plus half of an inch. So I took 4.5 inches at this point. So I'm just going to be connecting all the points together. So at the bottom of my dart line, I'm going to come up by 2 inches. Then at my waistline, I'm going to be taking half inch on both sides. Then I'll connect those lines to meet those marks to meet the 2-inch mark that I made. So right now I'm taking my shoulder to my bust point, which is 10.5 inches. So I'm just going to rule that out. So I'm just going to connect the line from my mid armhole to meet my bust point. Just like that. So I'll just connect the half-inch dart from my waistline to meet my bust point. So I'm just bringing in my curve ruler to smoothen out the sharp edge, just like that. From my mid armhole, I'll be coming down by half of an inch. just half of an inch. Then I'm just going to blend that to meet my bust point. I'm just going to extend that line by 1 inch. This extension is very important because if you don't extend it, you notice that when you're sewing, you're going to be short of fabric. So from that 1 inch mark, I'm going to form a new armhole. So that old armhole that we did the first time in the beginning is no longer needed. Our new armhole is what is now valid. So right now we're going to be taking our body measurements. So I'm taking my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 3 inches seam allowance, and I'll come to my waist and take my waist measurement divided by 4. We are going to be replacing that dart because we'll be cutting it off. So we have a total of 1 inch dart. So I'll put that 1 inch back, then I'll add my 3 inches seam allowance. So at the full length of our blouse, we're going to be taking our upper hip measurements plus our allowance. So if you don't have your upper hip measurements, you can as well use your hip measurements. So I'm just going to be joining all these points together. Coming to our shoulder line, we're going to be taking our neck width. So I used 5.5 inches as my front. I'm going to be using the same at my back. Make sure you're using the same neck width. So the depth of my neck, I'm going to be taking 3 inches. So I'll just connect this together to form my neckline. So I'm going to be adding ½ inch allowance at my shoulder. So we are done with our back panel. We're just going to cut this out. So at my side, I'm going to be coming up by 1.5 inch. Then I'll just make a curve just the way I did at the front. Then I'll continue cutting. So we're done cutting our back panel, and you can see the way it's looking. I'll just go ahead now and split open my zip allowance, and that is it. So this is my lining fabric already cut out, my front and my back. So right now I'm just going to place it on my satin fabric, and I'll cut exactly the same. I'll also go ahead and place it on my lace fabric and cut exactly the same thing I have on my lining.